how can I get in contact with my spirit guide? Or how can I hear my spirit guide better? Or get messages that I understand, maybe get signs that I can detect and see. This is what I want to talk with you today, because a lot of people I'm working with they kind of have a vague idea of their spirit guide. Some of them have some experience, but most people who have started to embrace the fact that they might have a spirit guide, they find that they struggle with the communication. And I know there are a lot of videos out there on how to communicate better with your spirit guide, and also mainly how to receive the information, because it's not so much communication in terms of how do I talk to my spirit guide, although even that can be a problem or a question mark for some people, but more so how can I receive the answers and how can I get something back. And therefore I want to make this really simple today. So for like every beginner who is maybe just discovering their spirit guide, or who hasn't met their spirit guides yet, that they can kind of start the process of beginning to perceive the spirit guide and beginning the relationship. Like you always have the relationship with the spirit guide, but the active relationship with your spirit guide from your end, okay, because they're always active. Now, I've already said guide or guides. Usually, like the way I see it, with most people, they have more than one guide. But for a start, or for some people, it's just enough to address one spirit guide, and some people find it easier to have like a one-to-one relationship than a relationship with a group of beings or helpers or whatever you want to call them. So if you feel you have more than one, this applies to like the guides or guide, but it's easier. Usually there is kind of one main energy, supportive energy that's there. So kind of your main spirit guide, if you want to call it that. And how you start, and this is really basic, but that's also fundamental. It's the key. How you start is that you need to acknowledge your spirit guide. And not just that you say, I believe in spirit guides, like, you know, I believe in angels, I believe in I don't have an example right now, but you know what I mean. It's not about believing, it's about acknowledging, which means it's much more tangible. The way you would approach it is like, okay, for now, because I want to communicate and I want to actually get proof that you're here, I'm going to assume you're here. I'm going to assume you exist, and not like I believe, I have faith, and it's too vague. It needs to be a clear intention, okay? For now, I acknowledge you exist, and only me not acknowledging you has kind of prevented this active communication, although your spirit guide has always been involved with you. So I now have the intention to start my relationship with you. I now have the intention to communicate with you and to receive your answers. So you assume first that your spirit guide is there, is real, is present. Okay, that's a start. And then from that, you open, like internally, you open yourself up to any way the spirit guide wants to communicate with you. Usually if you're at the beginning of your spiritual journey, or also kind of if you're at the beginning of developing your psychic abilities and extra sensory abilities, you don't quite know yet which channels are easier for you, like how you perceive the information from beyond. the easiest, whether it is through clairvoyance, clairaudience, like whether you hear things, think things, know things, feel things. And your spirit guide will use your abilities to communicate with you. So for example, and for a start, maybe we start there. For a start, you invite your spirit guide to communicate the best, whichever best way possible for you. That wasn't proper English, but the best way possible. And they know how you perceive, so they can use those things. So be open to, and this means really, really have your antennae everywhere out there. And what you feel in your heart, let's say when you ask a question to your spirit guide, right? Feel if you have any sensation in your heart, any feelings, any emotions, whether you have an instant knowing of an answer and you don't know where did this come out of, or whether it is a string of thoughts or just a word, or whether it's something you hear with your inner ear, internal ear, or whether it is an image or a vision that you see with your third eye, that you see internally. And pay attention to how the information comes through. Because once you start getting familiar with the most dominant way the information comes through, like the easiest, you can practice that more and more. Now, it's not, and this is difficult for some of you, it is not an intellectual process. It is not something you can do with your brain, with your mind, in terms of like you study something, you get really good at it, and then it works. That's not it. It is a process, and it is something you can develop and something you can improve, but it is a process that involves you as a whole person, and that requires of you to open yourself up from the heart. You cannot do this intellectually. You cannot grasp it. This is like saying, I want to know what unconditional love really feels like, and you try to understand it. You try to get the concept of unconditional love with your mind. Not happening, not working. So communicating with your spirit guide is the same thing. It involves you as a whole person, and it involves your heart. So you need to be willing and ready and open and joyful about opening your heart and letting the communication happen through that portal. That's where it happens. Now, yes, you still receive thoughts. There is still kind of mental involvement, but this is not how you can develop the skill, if you want to call it that, to communicate with your guides, because it's not a skill. It's not something like learning about physics or learning how to read or something. It's not something that you do mentally. It involves your mind, but it is not something you can learn mentally. It is about energy and about interpreting different frequencies, because how the information comes through is it is an energetic statement. It's like the same with the Akashic records. It's emotional concepts, it's energetic statements that are being translated into maybe words, sentences, or whatever. But there is an energetic quality to that which you cannot get and understand by simply using your rationale, by simply using your brain. It doesn't work like that. You need to involve and include all of the senses that you have available to interpret energy, to receive, perceive, and interpret energy and frequency, and move on from there. Now, your spiritual guidance is loving, okay? And you will possibly feel that because they're there because they love you, okay? And this was all set in place beforehand anyway. So remember and remind yourself, this communication happens because of this love basis that we have. Like this, that's why it can happen. This is the same or similar to why some people are able to communicate with their loved ones in spirit, because this bond of love makes it possible. Now, also some mediums are able to communicate with spirits with no love relationship, but they have kind of opened up other doors, and they have sharpened their ways and methods of perceiving the communication from beyond. But for regular Joe Soap, like us, we can perceive our loved ones because of the love that is facilitating and making it easier, the communication to take place. So with your spirit guide, acknowledge you're here, acknowledge I want to communicate with you, and then be open to receiving information. What helps at the beginning really, or what can help, is if you do a guided meditation where you visualize meeting your spirit guide, where you take some time to ask specific questions that come up and receive the answer during the conversation that you have with your spirit guide. And then later on, after you come out of the meditation, you can write down what you have received and you can reflect on it later. Okay, that does help, especially at the beginning. Later on, it could be like that throughout the day you communicate with your spirit guide, because it's like telepathy. It's like you're always receiving higher guidance, also from your higher self, whatever you want to call it, spirit guide or your higher self, wherever you direct your focus towards. And you receive information all the time anyway, but by you intentionally opening up to it, you can actually use it. You can actually take it in, get it, and use it then in your everyday life. It's not like that it's not there as long as we don't think about our spirit guides or higher self, or we don't believe in it. It is always there. It's part of us. But we can choose whether or not we open ourselves to that realm, to the possibility of going beyond our limited selves. And also know, this is what I've experienced over and over again, also heard from other people over and over again, your spirit guide is more than happy for you to start the communication, the active communication. Like, they're waiting for you to do this. You're not imposing. It's not like, oh, please, is it okay if I knock on this door and communicate with you? It's like, the doors are open. Come on in. I've been waiting for you for such a long time. And give yourself the chance to experience that too. Like so many people are describing this. Your spiritual guidance, your higher guidance is there ready for you, because we're spiritual beings, because we are part of that. The bigger part of us is with those energies on the other side, ready to support us here. So that's where you can start if you want to communicate with your guides. And also, they can send you visible signs, okay? They can send you people who say a certain sentence to you, which is the answer to what your question was maybe prior to your spirit guide. So you can get the answers through other people. You can get the answers through something you read. All of a sudden there is something coming up, and it could be a word, a sentence, something, and that is the answer, something to you hear on the radio. Like these synchronicities, their guidance is their communication. And once you open up, synchronicities are going to happen. And like coincidences are going to happen. Notice them, and then don't question, is it a coincidence? Is it a synchronicity? Is this something from my guide? Something from the higher realms? Don't question. Say thank you. Just thank them. Thank you that this is real. Thank you that this exists. Now, whether or not this is real, who knows, right? Because everything is filtered through our own perception. Everything. whether we turn something down or whether we accept something. It is all through the filters that we have. So it is up to you to decide what you want your reality to be. Okay, and like I said, your spiritual guidance is more than ready to welcome you. I'm going to love you and leave you for today, and we'll talk next time.